Another curveball today. At 12:25, we detected our first UFO contact. It was apparently classed as Light Scout, though this is not very helpful information. Anyway, we scrambled Raven 1 for our first aerial engagement. UFO 1 was intercepted at 12:33. The battle was over extremely fast, if you can even call it that. Our jet was hit exactly one time and suffered some extremely light damage, while the UFO was downed within 2 hits. If I had yawned when the engagement started, I would have missed the entire ordeal. Our fighter was back on 12:43. The command center was crowded at that time. Everyone was eager to see how our Air Force would stack up, and they might have been just as surprised as I when the action was over faster than it had started. Still, everyone erupted into a cheer of euphoria to celebrate our first airborne victory. Interestingly enough, satellite images of the crash site made it look like the aircraft was still in one piece, apparently unable to take off, but we decided to send an operation anyway, to potentially loot whatever valuable tech was there, and to make sure no aliens posed a threat to local population. The UFO wreck was now located outside of any cities, but there were some buildings nearby. We made a call to evacuate if anyone lived there. We touched down in the parking lot of some club bar. There were a few empty cars standing around, and the lights were on inside the building, which made me think that the evacuation was really sudden. I didn't really mean to cause such panic, but maybe it is for the better, as who knows what we will find inside the UFO. Wilson spotted the aliens first, two more sectoids, further behind the bar. They had a shot at him and were too far away for us to do anything. I tried to move my soldiers into better cover to provoke the hostiles to move up, but they opened fire instead, perhaps a symptom of overconfidence, but I wasn't expecting the aliens to even see them so far away. I wonder what the accuracy on those weapons are compared to ours. Wilson got hit by a volley of plasma through the thin wall of the building. He later described to me the sensation of these heavy globules of matter knocking the air out of his lungs. Then a searing skin pain from the heat. It felt like he was going to boil to death. He lived though, and the medikit he was carrying helped get him back on his feet and anesthetize his burns. He's under my command, and his safety is my responsibility. And now he had a brush with death. McKay gave the aliens a taste of her aggression and ran right for their position. A shotgun put to its misshapen and mouthless face and blasted into pieces. The other one was holding position and still firing blindly, possibly fearing for its life. But Fournier hit this insane shot that I was absolutely not expecting her to. The first group was neutralized. It was at this moment the first inklings of doubt in my ability started creeping in. I don't know whether I was getting overconfident or helpless, but I just put my soldiers through way more danger than we can afford. This is going to end poorly for someone. Still, the aliens were waiting for us, and they had a great position. So even in hindsight, I don't know what I should have done. Moving on, we were slowly advancing towards the crash site, and right behind the building, the devastation was apparent. There used to be some kind of overpass here, and now it was standing in tatters. The rubble was hard to navigate, and my operatives could see the crashed ship now. The debris was covering our approach, and we might be able to get quite close while undetected. There seemed to be patches of a force field or some such in between the sleek and rounded hull. Otherwise, I must say, the shape was a flying saucer straight from an 80s B movie. Still, it was impressive, and even more so for the soldiers on the ground, seeing it with their own eyes. How was it achieving flight, if there was no visible jet engine or any other known method of propulsion. Clearly some advanced technology that nobody has conceived of on Earth so far. We made visual contact on two sectoids right outside the spacecraft. I refrained from attacking, since they had decent cover, but so did we. They opened inaccurate fire, and we replied with one inaccurate rocket, followed by an accurate grenade from McKay, taking out both at once. Although, I suppose the throw was accurate, the grenade attacks in all directions indiscriminately. We lined up on the wall of the UFO, getting ready to enter. I wanted to be as close as possible, to have the most options to respond to whatever might be inside. Fortunately, Wilson said they heard some movement past the wall, towards the left, so that's where we prepared to breach. When everyone was there, he peeked beyond the edge of the wall and saw the most peculiar thing, a small yellow object hovering above the floor. After a split second, it started moving and expanding outwards, folding out of itself seemingly. Enchanted we looked, to see a humanoid trooper forming itself into existence. It took to running, and moved outside, seemingly preparing to attack. And I'm glad it did, because out here we had him on a silver platter. Fournier threw the killing grenade to finish this creature off, ending the mission. Curiously enough, the being collapsed again when killed, leaving no trace of a body behind. The heroes were back at 14:29 hours, and I walked to the landing pad to greet them, as usual, but mainly to see Wilson's injuries. I probably couldn't help him any more than any other person in the crowd, but I was curious to see what had happened to him, to see what the aliens were capable of. He walked out on his own feet, but medics rushed to help him walk to the infirmary. I followed them and had a brief chat. On the outside, it looked like he had major burns on his torso, but nothing more. I trundled back to the command center, intent on finally decorating Squaddy Chepornov with that medal. It was called Urban Combat Badge. Fitting enough, I suppose. I found him next to Wilson, in the infirmary, and ordered him to prepare. Soon enough, the first medal in XCOM history had been handed out. The ceremony was modest and quick, but the recipient was beaming. We've managed to recover a lot of interesting tech from UFO-1, and the scientists were salivating at the thought of studying some of the objects. But I decided that constructing a workshop was more important for the moment, so I gave in and sold one flight computer to the grey market. Possibly a sign of irresponsible spending, but I think we must make the most of what we've got. The report for weapon fragments was ready at 4:25, but I read it after I had gotten up. Much like we suspected, the weapons of the aliens are vastly superior technologically to ours, but the study managed to yield some schematics. The scientists have designed a scope item for use by our soldiers, but they told me to never carry a grenade along with it, for some reason. They believed they now had the necessary knowledge to begin designing new laser systems for arms, resulting in an entirely new generation of warfare. However, it would take over 1 month to complete this, with how few scientists we had around. Therefore, I decided to study the yellow crystalline substance instead, which we were now calling MELD. I believed having something to show for our efforts sooner would pay better dividends. At 10:27, I received a message that Raven 1 was now fully repaired and fueled again. Beyond that, I visited Wilson in the infirmary again this day. Less so to learn anything new, more to keep his morale high. He told me how his comrades are all getting along nicely, and that the collective all had a certain appreciation for me, Despite the varying nationalities and cultures, we all feel united once an outside force invades. It's not USA versus Russia now, it's not East versus West, it's humans versus aliens. Perhaps inspired then, I later went to see the rest of the barracks, since their training was over by then. We had a round of pool. Chepurnov won, because of course he did. I was down in engineering today, discussing our plans with Dr. Shen. It seems like we might have misjudged the entire schedule of the planned operation. According to our back of the napkin calculations, the satellite uplink isn't going to be operational before the end of the month. I believed we would just make it, but we might be a few hours off. I suppose what delayed us was the whole charade with the workshop and requiring engineers to build the uplink. A shame, as we've invested considerable resources into sending out several satellites by the end of the month. Still, I will order them constructed in case something changes. It will take 20 days to do so, and 14 to build a new uplink. There is a few days grace where we must count on at least one highly trained engineer to fall upon us from the heavens. I got figuratively dragged out of bed again at 3:28 hours, for what would be our first operation to have gone quite wrong. This time, it wasn't abductions or UFO contacts. It was a mission from the Council itself. The aliens attacked and damaged a bridge in Paris, and a UN official is still trapped there, pinned down by hostiles. The goal is to get there and extract him safely, along with whoever else might still be alive. The aliens had done a number on the site of attack. Car wrecks everywhere. The bridge was in tatters. But Bradford assured me it was safe to land and proceed. Just as the squad had left the Skyranger, we got called over by a friendly operative. He was part of Peter Van Dorn's entourage, the extraction target, and apparently nobody else survived besides the two. He let us know that Van Dorn was up ahead, but he could not help as he had lost his weapons in the chaos. Bradford ordered for him to join our squad on the way back and help with the fight for XCOM. He agreed, and I winced at the amount of paperwork I would have to get done to relieve an operative on duty from foreign soil, but said nothing. We could only move in one direction, so we slowly made our way forward, while covering our advances. Soon we hit contact on some new type of enemy. It was one unnaturally slender and tall man, dressed in dark blue, smart attire. The squad could see he was armed with a weapon similar in design to that of the sectoids, but significantly bigger. When it spotted us, it went quickly into a sort of crouch, hissed almost like a cat, and ran into cover. At this point, it really looked more like a panicking civilian who found an alien weapon. So I told Fournier to try and make contact. She exclaimed several things, waiting for a response. First in English, then in French. "Sir, are you okay? Sir, we are armed forces here to control the situation. You are in a live combat zone, and if you do not talk back to us and let us escort you to safety, we will have to fire and kill." The thin man was still completely hidden behind the rubble and giving no answer. Of course, the squad was ready to fire at the first sign of hostility. There was a growing concern in the back of my head. What if he was deaf? Maybe even the attack itself caused this. He might be delirious or amnesiac. I could feel the growing anxiety make my head feel hot and then sweat. The realization was setting in that I would probably have to risk the life of some of my troops to help this, maybe, civilian, or get them killed in the process. What happened later was faster than I could follow in the moment. I saw Chepurnov flinch a bit before firing his gun at the man. Of course, it was a hit and a kill. The body then exploded into a cloud of grayish-green mist. It ended up being a good choice in the end. The thing was no man after all. At the time, I thought Chapurnov had insubordinated and just fired on his own. He explained that he saw the man peek his gun out from behind the cover and was aiming at him. I didn't see it then, so I had to take his word on it, for the time being. When the mission was over, I closely went over the footage and saw that he wasn't lying. The man had superhuman reflexes. Getting near that mist, I gathered, was probably a bad idea. Thankfully, it seemed to have petered out after 2 minutes or so. We followed on ahead, taking time to reload. We were coming up to a section of the bridge that was more collapsed than the rest. Visual was soon made on a man down there who started calling to us. Bradford told me this was Van Dorn. As we could see more of this section, we got visual on two sectoids, right opposite of our target, and they ran into cover. Chapurnov managed to kill one of them, because of course he did, and Fournier wounded the other. It managed to fire at us once, but ineffectively. Fournier finished the skirmish. Despite that the area looked clear, I took my time with getting the units down to help Van Dorn. The two sectoids seemed to be keeping an eye on him, so I was fully expecting more aliens to lie in wait. I eventually sent Guzman down there and bite that bullet. Indeed, two more sectoids were waiting at the top of this broken off section. They had great height advantage and amazing cover. A perfect place to pin us down, really. It was even so far away that my other units could not see them. The car wreck Guzman and Van Dorn hid behind was great cover as well. Too great even. They could not see what was happening. I was hoping to draw out an advance from the aliens and surprise them with the other operatives lying ready, finger on the trigger. But they were patient, waiting for Guzman to move. That's about where everything started going wrong. I sent Guzman back first, and he ate a volley of plasma. This is the first time we properly saw the sectoids do something. There was this purple energy enwreathing their two heads. It looked intimidating and almost magical. Guzman only got to see it for a split second before climbing back up to meet the rest. He had to use the medkit to heal up, and I sent Van Dorn to follow. True hell ensued soon. The two sectoids started advancing. It took a shot at Guzman, and his weak cover could not save him. He took a faceful of plasma straight to the chin. The sizzling flesh left behind a huge hole. There was no saving him. Guzman was dead, the first death of an XCOM operative. The other units were busy with something else though. Another thin man dropped down straight from the sky, out in the open, in the middle of what was left of the squad. The first round of shots all missed, but I decided to play it safe, and we would grenade him to death instead. No more risks. When this enemy exploded, both from the shrapnel but also into the strange cloud, it seems like the realization had set in that a man just died right behind them. There was no time to grieve though. The sectoids kept their charge and injured Chapurnov. A swift shot from Fournier between the large orange eyes and it was gone. The other one seemed a bit less inclined to rush in, so I left Fournier to watch our backs as we were retreating. Unfortunately, two more thin men dropped down. Bradford gave me a slight heads up just before it happened, but I have no idea how they managed to achieve this. Where were they falling from? Was there still an airborne UFO around that we weren't picking up? I instructed Chapurnov to rocket the one hostile he could target into oblivion. Only one was left, but he couldn't be approached. He was ready and waiting to fire. I moved McKay to the edge of this car to keep an eye on him, but nothing more. Then the two remaining aliens pushed together from both sides simultaneously. The sectoid was taken out by the sniper, but the thin man got off a shot and hit McKay. I sent her in to finish the job, but it seems like the wounds got to her. The aim was all shaky, and she couldn't stand up properly. Still, the alien seemed to get intimidated and panicked, giving her a second chance. But before she could land a shot, Chapurnov swooped in and took the kill. That was it. Area secure. Van Dorn and the friendly operative from earlier walked into our Skyranger. We collected what we could, including Guzman's corpse. We would give him a funeral to remember. Everyone in the back of the craft wept on the way back. At 7:44 hours, the heroes returned, one of them for the first and only time. I felt an obligation to pay my respects to the man who gave his life to save another, and to win this war in general. But as a soldier, he gave his life serving me. I am his superior and responsible for him. The ceremony was brief up on the surface. It followed an autopsy, during which, surprisingly enough, the doctors determined a face full of plasma was the cause of demise. The first, and probably not the only, grave filled. McKay brought and propped up the weapons he was carrying during the mission on the tombstone. The crowd almost felt bigger than when Operation Raid Hydra was over. Interestingly enough, the scene was a reminder to me of my own mortality. What if someday I won't be able to wield pawns to fight in my stead, while my body sits in a comfortable chair in the middle of a room that's a little too cold for my preferences? What if I will have to grab a rifle myself and fly across a vast ocean inside the fastest aircraft money can buy? What if the alien's capabilities of camouflage will advance so far that every time I lie down to sleep, there will be a faint concern in the back of my head that someone in the base will put me to eternal slumber? I returned to the command center and decided to read up more on Guzman's background and try to get in contact with his family to give them the news. I was already reaching for the phone when Bradford told me he will have someone more trained in such matters do it for me. Had I been in a more confrontational mood, I would have taken this as an insult, but on this day I was glad for it. This wasn't the end of the day yet, though. The council had issued me 2 more medals to award. I figured a ceremony like that would help restore some morale. I awarded the Defender's Medal to Chapurnov and another UCB to McKay, regarding they went through some real fire in the past missions. I didn't have time to spend with them, though, as I had some other matters to attend to. If we were going to make it with the construction of our satellites by the end of the month, we would have to start now. I sold almost all of the artifacts we had on the grey market, including the UFO machinery, to fund the production of 4 satellites, which would be, hypothetically, the highest amount we could launch by then. I figured sending out the satellites would give us more opportunities to collect them back. The construction of the next segment of the Axis lift was almost done, and so I ordered the construction of the officer training school as well. Bradford was telling me this facility would let me take part in further tactical training and improve the performance of our units. The details were lost on me exactly as to why I had to spend money to be allowed to send 5 soldiers on a mission instead of 4, but it seemed like a worthwhile investment. The generator was also finished now, allowing us to build the satellite relay in the future. Only past 2100 hours did I have time to talk to the soldiers in the barracks, and welcome Etienne Dubois among the ranks. a specialist in heavy weaponry. I went to bed with a block of concrete in my gut following the events of the day. I woke up at around 4:30 hours and couldn't sleep. The visions of Guzman's death would not leave. I went up to the graveyard to sit there again. To my surprise, Fournier was there as well, sitting in silence. We had a brief chat, neither of us apparently deriving much closure. When she left, I wept for the first time since the invasion had started. Despite being more sad than earlier, this gave me a sense of relief, and I was able to fall asleep again. At 13:03 hours, Ben Wilson was let go from the infirmary and returned to active duty. At the shooting range, he was actually scoring better now than before Operation Silent Dawn, but he expressed regret the doctors didn't allow him to attend the funeral from 2 days ago. Despite the training of today filling him with confidence, there was a deep sorrow to losing a brother in arms. They weren't together on the mission, of course, but they did have some time to bond at the HQ. I checked on the rest of the barracks, and they seemed to have a hold of their emotions, except for Fournier. They told me her behavior could only be described as deeply depressed. There was a weariness to every move she was doing, and when she spoke, a combination of sorrow and fear could be heard in the background. She did have the best, or worst, depending on how you look at it, view of Guzman during the fight. I asked her to go with me and pay a visit to the psychologist. I could see immediately everything they told me was true, but she agreed. This day marked the end of the second week at XCOM HQ. 4 operations behind us, and I think we did well responding to this new, unprecedented, and unknown enemy. The science and production were chugging along sufficiently smoothly, though not at the fastest rate. I was still racked with guilt over Guzman, and that might never go away, but in a way, I felt like only one soldier dying under my command up to this point was a very lucky outcome. I mean, these aliens are so much more advanced than us. They operate in mysterious ways. They can strike anywhere, anytime. This won't bring him back, but today I felt like we might be able to avenge him, and should put our best effort for it. For Earth, for humanity.